house, whatever. I mean, the labels bother me, but we're just groove musicians. So the Martinez brothers came in, and when they heard the track, they went, "Wow, when did you record this?" I went, I looked on the track sheet. I went, "Oh, 1979." They were like, "Damn, this is killer." So, so they're the only extra people on the first Chic single. The second Chic single is a song called "Back in the Old School." So I wanted to have those two songs together, and the reason why is because the first song is everybody who was on the very first Chic single, which was called "Everybody Dance." Now, I wrote that song one afternoon, and we were playing for Luther Vandross. Everybody on that record is on that first record. And the song called "Back in the Old School" was the song that I wrote 2 days before I disbanded the group totally and recorded "Let's Dance." So it's like the very beginning and the very end of Chic. It's, formally on contract. So I just wanted to put those two songs together, and it's what I call closing the circle. It's like, now that I've had those two songs bookending the spiritual circle of Chic, now I can move on to the Chic that I am now, because Bernard has passed away, Luther Vandross has passed away, Raymond Jones has passed away, Tony Thompson has passed away. I'm the only one of the 5 guys that's still alive. So even though the album is about dance music, when I listen to the song, every time we get to a certain part, actually tears, I've seen it happen. Tears roll down my eyes. Even though I'm having a good time, it's so emotional to me, because Chic music has always meant many things on many levels. So the way Chic records were made was we would have our basic parts. And the way that the grooves developed is that if a person, so if I wrote the charts to "I Want Your Love," and that's a bad example because that was written completely 100%. But like, let's say, for example, "Good Times." When I wrote "Good Times," Bernard had never heard it before because I had just written it that day. And he walked into the studio and he heard me, Tony, Raymond, and Rob playing, don't, 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 don't. So he walks in and goes, "Wow, what is that?" And the engineer, Bob Clearmountain, says, "I don't know. It's something Nile came up with this morning." And Bernard came in the studio and he started mocking me, because that's typically what we would do. So I just started screaming out "walk," because we had been trying to put a walking bass on songs for years and it just never worked. So I screamed out "walk," and he walked, and it made sense. And I just looked to the engineer and said, "Make it red, record it," because we had the charts. We knew what the format was. We played it down, I think maybe first, and if not first, second take. That became "Good Times," and it was done. We were finished. So when I listen to these new tapes, I hear Tony's part, or Bernard's part, or Raymond's part, or Rob's part, and I just say, okay, those are their parts. And at the time, I may have had a part, but I'm the only one who can change my part. So I change my part to make the ensemble sound funkier. You know what I mean? Because I'm the only guy who can change. Theirs has to stay the same. So it's a challenge for me, but man, it's so much fun. In today's world, because I can do so much with technology, I could put it out exactly the way we played it. I could snap it to the grid so DJs, modern DJs, can play it, and they could say, "This record is 128 BPM, and it's exactly that," or "It's 125, and it's exactly that." Or I can say, like the old days, they would write 122 BPM, but it would, it would go in and out. So I'm faced with a lot of challenges, but they're all fun. None of this is daunting to me. I'm not afraid of it because I'm not afraid of failure. I mean, most records don't recoup. But I think that there's a certain fun in these records that I like them so much. I really believe other people will like them. I mean, between the songs, we're talking, we're laughing about stuff that happened in 1980. You know, it's like crazy. You know, you're hearing us talk about, in this one section, we're talking about Bob Marley, and in another section, we're talking about, you know, Boys to Men or Bobby Brown or something like that. Like, hey man, have you heard that new girl Whitney Houston? It's like crazy. It's like, you know, so all of that stuff inspires us because even though I'm making a new record, a lot of those songs we're talking about things that have happened 30 years ago. Last night, right before I come over, I'm packing my clothing, and the phone rings, and he says, "Nile, it's Elton." And I said, "Hey, Elton, how are you, man?" And we almost start crying. He just says, "I just want to tell you, Chic is the best band that I've ever played with." That's really what he said, but I feel too egotistical saying that. But that's what he said. So I say Chic was one of the best bands he ever played with, but he did say to me, Chic was the best band I've ever played with. And I was so flattered because I personally have played with Elton John 20 times or more. So I know what he's capable of. He is extraordinary. People, you know, it's funny. When you become a pop star, you sometimes forget what they were before they were the pop star. Elton John is an extraordinary virtuoso piano player. He doesn't have to sing a note and can dazzle you with his piano playing. I mean, it's extraordinary. And what happened was he came on stage with Chic, and we were playing a funk song. And then we started to go into jazz, but we still kept the groove. We still kept it funky. And we were going out there really, you know, like, you know, serious jazz. I mean, you know, Herbie Hancock, John McLaughlin, Return to Forever kind of jazz, but still the people were enjoying it because the level of virtuosity between Elton and myself, the whole band stopped playing except for the drummer. He just kept time, and Elton and I just took it and went off crazy. We went off to some crazy place, and people were just stunned because they didn't expect that from a funk song. They just didn't expect it. And the way that people used to play in what we called the free jazz era, you know, around the late 60s, all of a sudden this became natural to us. It just came out of nowhere. And both Elton and I went into free jazz together. So I started comping and he started playing. Then I started soloing jazz style, like which most people don't get to hear me do, except, you know, on a record every now and then. And it was just fabulous. And I stuck up my hand and I had to stop him because I was cognizant of the fact that we had a room full of thousands of people and they're not from that era. But we went off for a good 15, 20 minutes. I stuck up my hand. I said, Elton, okay, let's go back to good times. And he called me yesterday and I laughed and I said, truthfully, if I hadn't stuck my hand up, we'd still be playing. He said, you're right, we were having a blast. And he told me, he says, I cannot believe that Chic is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He said, and I think I'm quoting him, I'm not paraphrasing him. I think he said, well, I'll have to paraphrase, I don't know it exactly, but he says, I think it's actually the worst crime in all of music that Chic is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He said, the worst crime in all of music. I was like going, Elton, I don't care. I honestly don't do music to get awards. I do music because of what you and I did the other night. That's my payoff. I don't need to tell me, I don't need to have someone else tell me that Elton John and Chic can have the time of their lives. I just had it. I know I did it, so you don't have to tell me I can do it. But it was wonderful. It was beautiful to have a person of that caliber. And when I say of that caliber, I don't mean the Elton John that people think of. I mean the Elton John that guy call me and tell me something like that. I mean, I was touched. My heart was blown away. Same thing, Daft Punk. You know, you have Elton John over here, you have Daft Punk over here. Daft Punk made a film for me, and their film was not about my new record in particular or Diana Ross in particular or anything. It was about all my compositions in general. And it made me cry because I saw how much money they put into it. I saw the quality of production. I was like, you don't have to do this. It's okay. We're friends. I'm cool. And they said, no, we want to we want to do an interview for you, but the robots don't talk. So we had to do a production. So they made a film. And, and they're so brilliant that the detail that they put into a simple short film like this, like you can say to yourself, you can look at it, it's a shot on 65 millimeter. It's all gorgeous and beautiful. I'm never gonna change. I mean, it's like I think probably one of the greatest things in my life is that I'm naturally shy. So when I'm being the character that we created for Chic, because they were characters, um, I have to rise to the occasion and think outside of myself. I have to almost be like an actor because normally I'm shy and afraid, even though I'm inquisitive. I'd rather read a book than talk to a person. So what I've done in my life is I've gone out of my way to change my personality. So yesterday, flying into Germany, I was talking to everybody on the plane, every single person. We were, trading business cards and talking because I know that naturally I would probably be like this. So I purposely changed my personality. As you can see, when we're playing with Night of the Proms, it's a very traditional straight orchestra, and probably they're not accustomed to standing up and dancing. Well, I walk out in the audience, and because I want to make friends with everybody, because I want them to respond to our music, which is music that brings people together. It's unifying, happy music. The music business is weird. It's very superstitious. Um, and if something is happening, they expect every record to sound like that. If like right now, for the last few years, you have to admit almost every single record came out and went, gang, 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 nah, nah. I mean, and it would break down and go, ooh, the bass would drop and then it would go, bam, 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 bam. It's like every record. And people didn't tire of the exact same chord changes. I thought last year if I heard the word moment again, I was gonna die. And if I heard swagger rhyme with Jagger, I was gonna cut my throat. I was like, oh, come on. How many records can go swagger and Jagger? And how many records can go, this moment, this moment, this moment, this moment. We're waiting for this moment. Tonight is this moment. This is like we only had one moment. It's like, come on. The music I write, and I hope it's a hit. I don't write it to try and make a hit. I write it and hope that it's a hit. And it's a big difference because you have to not be afraid to fail because most records fail. And I'm in that category. Most of my records fail. I mean, last night, right before I left home, I played on a jazz record, a guy you probably never even heard of, but I just loved the fact that he had enough bravery to write me an email and say, hey, Nile, I got this new song. I'm a jazz artist, blah, blah, blah. Would you play on it? I think it'd be great for you. Your style is exactly right for us. I listened to the song. I thought, well, my style isn't exactly right, but I'll make it right. And I played his song. Right before, I was a little late coming to see you because I wrote my notes down, telling my engineer he made my guitar too loud, too bright, blah, blah, blah. Do this. I'm genuinely a fan. I mean, when Paul McCartney texted me the other day while I was getting a pedicure, I was just over the moon. And I think that people know that I'm not bragging. I'm just being a fanboy. I mean, when Elton John calls me last night and we're almost on the phone crying, saying, this is what music is supposed to be like. That if we feel the spirit to go left, we get to go left, and hopefully the level of of sophistication of the audience will allow us to go there, because the playing and listening of jazz presupposes a certain amount of intellectualism on both parts. You got to be able to play it, but you got to be able to hear it too. Like, so we want to entertain people. We don't want to turn the people off, because we had thousands of people standing up cheering and going crazy. So I could feel that there was a time where we needed to pull back. Elton was ready to keep going. I was like, okay, dude, let's get back to good times. It's really important to remember that music, art, any kind of internal artistic expression is beautiful, ugly, diabolical, loving, all of these things that humans are. Deepak Chopra told me that one day, and I thought, wow, that's cool. I really relate to that. I write bad songs. Every song I write is not "I Want Your Love." Every song I write is not "Good Times." You know, every song that I produce is not "Let's Dance." I mean, you know, you got to do. When I was a child, one of my favorite music teachers told me that you have to mine a ton of ore to get an ounce of gold. And I've always believed that. I have to write, work to get one little gem. And I love that. That he says that's why I have to learn how to love working. If you don't love working, you'll never get that ounce of gold. You got to dig a ton of ore. I would have made better music and more of it had I not been a drug and party guy. But in a way, I think that the way that drugs and the society marketed that type of behavior, that felt like the reward. It felt like if you had achieved this, you get to do this. So there's a balance in there somewhere. I haven't had a drink or a drug in 20 years, and I think that I'm writing songs now better than I've ever written before. Certainly volume-wise, I mean, I must have written 14 songs with Avicii, maybe 20 with Carl Cox. God knows, like I said, I just played a jazz record last night, drop of a hat, nothing to it. As I was leaving to come to Germany, I was like looking at the clock going, oh my God, I got to pack my clothes. And it was like, turn on the thing and just played it and said, hey man, you know, here we go. Done. I don't even think about it. I love it. I'll play for anybody that I can at the time. I just did a record with Nervo and Nicky Romero, like that. David Guetta pulled the guitar out and just came with his lick. Most people are passive. The first time I came to Germany, I was very young, very, very young, and most people had lived through the Nazi era, and they were really cool. They were really nice and friendly. We had a great time, and I was like talking to them. I was like going, so I'm 19, you're 35. What the hell were you guys doing? And they were like going, we were passive. We just tried to stay out of the way. I don't know anything about the future other than the role that I'm going to try and play in it. And as I says, I make my music hoping that people will like it. I don't make it calculating, trying to make them like it. I make it and say, okay, what do you think? Okay, what do you think? Hey, maybe I can get this DJ to play it and let's see the reaction. We played 2 of my songs the other day at a really exclusive party in Hollywood, and I was furious. I thought that it had leaked, but my partner had given it to the DJ, and everybody danced. And I went, wow, how cool is that? Like it's like nobody got off the dance floor and went, I don't know this record. It was like an old friend had come home because it's straight disco. It's disco, 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 but our form of it's chic disco.